Alright, this is an original Tales Fair story, and this one took a turn I honestly did not expect. Alright, let's get into it.
My 11-year-old daughter came home and found this note. Let her die. Don't call anyone. Then we saw my husband's grandmother, pale and all alone. My daughter rushed to call an ambulance, but Grandma grabbed her hand and said, "No doctors, just look under the bed." Soon, my in-laws lost everything. I used to think the most stressful thing in my life was packing for a vacation that cost less than a new set of tires. Turns out, the real stress begins when you walk into your own kitchen and find a handwritten instruction to let someone die. My name is Sarah. I live outside Seattle, in a big house that looks impressive to strangers and exhausting to the person who has to clean it. I have an 11-year-old daughter named Maddie, smart, observant, and allergic to injustice. And I had a husband named Eric. I say had like it's a casual detail. It's not. Eric came with a mother, Linda, who could smile while making you feel like you were a stain on her family's fabric. Linda wasn't openly cruel. She was strategic. She believed in plausible deniability the way other women believe in probiotics. Then there was Eric's grandmother, Evelyn Sinclair. For 2 years, Evelyn lived with us. She was declining, according to Linda. Weak. Confused. Not really all there. She stayed in the back bedroom, quiet, motionless, staring past people as if we were a TV left on in the corner. Maddie tried with her anyway. She'd leave drawings by Evelyn's door. Little notes like, "Hi, Grandma Evelyn. I hope you feel better. Sometimes a heart, sometimes a sun." Linda never once acknowledged those drawings. Not a "how sweet," not a "thank you," nothing. Eric would just shrug and say, "You know how Mom is." That phrase should come with a warning label. A week before everything blew up, I made a decision Eric labeled stupid. I booked a cheap 3-night getaway for me and Maddie. Ocean shores, off-season, budget resort, indoor pool, faded carpet, the kind of place where the most luxurious feature is that the coffee is free. Maddie was excited in that full-body kid way, like joy is something you can physically carry. Eric, meanwhile, looked at the reservation email like I'd sent him proof of my incompetence. "Ocean shores?" he said. "That's not a vacation." "It's 3 days," I said. "Maddie wants the beach." He made a sound like the beach was a personal insult. "It's going to be cold. It's going to be damp. What's the point?" "The point," I said, keeping my voice even, "is that our daughter has been asking for something simple, and I'm doing it." Eric didn't argue. He didn't have to. He just delivered the kind of sigh that says, "I'm letting you embarrass yourself." "Fine," he said. "Go. I'll stay here." Maddie stood there with her backpack strap wrapped around her hand, quiet and small, watching her father opt out of her happiness like it was a tedious subscription. Linda called later, because Linda always called later. "I heard you're taking Madison to Ocean Shores," she said, pronouncing it like a medical condition. "Well, that's nice. It'll be fun," I said. She hummed. "Eric's staying behind, of course. Someone has to manage the house." Manage what? His fantasy? But I didn't bite. I never bit. Because biting Linda didn't hurt Linda. It just gave her a reason to call Eric and say, "Your wife is so emotional." So Maddie and I went. And it was lovely. Not Instagram lovely. Not we rented a villa lovely. Just real life lovely. We ate fries on the sand. Maddie collected shells like they were priceless artifacts. We swam in the indoor pool and pretended the smell wasn't aggressively chemical. We laughed. I barely checked my phone. That part will haunt me. Because while Maddie and I were playing mini golf, Eric and Linda were doing something else. I found out the way modern marriages end, through a social media post you weren't meant to see. Linda, oversized sunglasses, tropical drink, smug smile, captioned a photo, finally getting some real rest. Family time. Behind her, Eric grinned like a man who had never had to choose between his child and his ego, and the location tag? Maui. Maddie saw it over my shoulder. She stared at the screen for a long moment and said, very quietly, "So we weren't invited." I wanted to lie. I wanted to say, "Of course you were, sweetheart. It's just complicated." But Maddie is 11. She's old enough to recognize the difference between complicated and cruel. "No," I admitted. "We weren't." She nodded once. Not dramatic, not teary, just filing it away. Then she went back to the shell collection like she could control that part of the world at least. We drove home the next afternoon. Seattle greeted us with gray skies and damp air, which felt fitting. Maddie sang along to the radio. I kept my eyes on the road and tried not to imagine what was happening back at the house. I told myself it was fine. Eric was selfish, not criminal. Linda was mean, not evil. Evelyn was there, quiet, safe. That was my second mistake. We pulled into the driveway around 3 p.m. The house looked normal, expensive, still, like it was posing. But something was wrong. The porch light was on, in daylight. The air felt too quiet, like the house itself had muted the volume. Maddie hopped out first, rolled her suitcase to the door, and pushed it open with her shoulder. Then she stopped. Her suitcase tipped over. She didn't even notice. "Mom," she said. Her voice was thin. "There's a note." I walked in and saw it immediately. White paper placed dead center on the kitchen island like a centerpiece. Maddie read it out loud because she couldn't believe it was real. "Let her die. Don't call anyone." My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. I snatched the paper. No signature. No explanation. But I knew the handwriting. Neat. Confident. The handwriting of someone who writes lists for other people to follow. "Linda," Maddie whispered. "Is that about Grandma Evelyn?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because answering would make the note a fact, not a nightmare. I walked down the hallway toward the back room. Maddie followed close behind me like my shadow had learned fear. The back hallway always felt cooler, dimmer. It led to Evelyn's room, the room Linda called the quiet room, like it was a spa feature. When we got there, I saw the new lock, a keyed lock, on the outside of the door. My mouth went dry. I tried the knob. Locked. I knocked. "Evelyn?" No response. Maddie's breath hitched. Maybe she can't answer. My heart started pounding in my ears. I didn't have a key. I didn't have patience. I had the sudden clarity that something deeply wrong had happened in my house while I was buying my kid ice cream. "Stand back," I told Maddie. She didn't argue, but she stayed close. I grabbed the nearest heavy object, a metal candlestick from Linda's little vampire decor hallway table, and slammed it into the lock. Once. Twice. On the third hit, the cheap mechanism gave with a crack. The door swung open. The smell hit first. Stale air, dry heat, the distinct wrongness of a room that has had the door shut on a living person. Then I saw Evelyn. She was in bed, pale as paper, lips cracked, eyes half open. No water on the nightstand. No snacks. No meds. No call button. Nothing. Maddie made a broken sound and ran to the bed. "Grandma!" she cried, grabbing Evelyn's hand. Evelyn's fingers were cold. Maddie looked up at me, terrified. "Mom, she's dying." I moved on instinct. Checked pulse. Weak. But there. I rushed to the kitchen and grabbed a glass of water. Maddie already had her phone out. Because Maddie doesn't freeze. Maddie acts. She hit the emergency call screen, thumb trembling. I'm calling 911, she said. That's when Evelyn moved. Not slowly, not frailly. She grabbed Maddie's wrist with startling strength. Maddie froze. Her eyes widened. Evelyn's gaze sharpened, suddenly focused, and she whispered in a rough, clear voice, "No doctors." Maddie blinked. "But you—" Evelyn tightened her grip just enough to keep Maddie in place. "Just look under the bed," she said. She saw Maddie's panic and softened her voice. "Not an ambulance. Not the ER. Not yet," she whispered. "If they get me out of this house before we document what they did, they'll call it an accident. Give me 15 minutes. Then you can call whoever you want." I stared at her. This was not the woman Linda described. This was not the confused grandmother who didn't know what day it was. Maddie looked at me like, is she hallucinating? Am I hallucinating? I said, "Evelyn, you need medical help." "I will," she rasped. "But not yet. Under the bed." Maddie lowered her phone but didn't hang up. She just hovered, ready. I knelt and looked under the bed. A plastic storage bin was shoved far back, hidden like someone had intentionally placed it where no one would casually find it. I pulled it out. Inside, bottled water, electrolyte packets, a small first aid kit, a pulse oximeter, and an envelope taped to a cheap-looking phone. A sticky note on the phone read, "Call Samuel." Maddie whispered, "Who's Samuel?" Evelyn released her wrist and leaned back like she'd completed step 1 of a plan. "My attorney," she said. I stared at the phone. "You have a hidden emergency kit and a burner phone?" Evelyn's mouth twitched. "Yes." Maddie's voice shook, half horrified, half impressed. "Are you, like, spy grandma?" Evelyn's eyes flicked to her. "I'm a grandmother who got tired of being underestimated." I mixed an electrolyte packet into water and helped Evelyn drink slowly. Maddie watched her vitals on the oximeter like she'd been training for this her whole life. Then I grabbed the phone and called the only saved contact. It rang twice. "Samuel Miller," a calm voice answered. "Samuel," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is Sarah. I'm with Evelyn. She told me to call you." No surprise. No confusion. "Is she awake?" he asked. Evelyn rasped, "I'm awake." Samuel exhaled like he'd been waiting to hear that. "Put me on speaker." I did. "Evelyn," Samuel said, "are they gone?" "They're in Maui," Evelyn replied. "They think I'll be dead by the time they get back." Maddie's face tightened with disgust. "That's evil." Evelyn's eyes softened, just slightly, at Maddie's voice. Samuel said, "Sarah, listen carefully. Take photos. The lock, the room, the lack of water, everything. I'm dispatching security and a medical provider. And Sarah, don't contact Eric or Linda." I let out a short laugh that wasn't funny. "I wasn't planning on it. I'm busy discovering my house has a hostage room." Samuel's tone remained steady. "Evelyn, do you consent to law enforcement involvement?" "Yes," Evelyn said. Maddie lifted her phone again. "If she passes out, I'm calling 911 anyway." Evelyn looked at Maddie and, this time, smiled, small and real. "Fair," she said. While we waited, I kept feeding Evelyn water in small sips. Maddie stayed at her side, holding her hand. She was shaking, but she didn't run. That matters. Because when you're 11 and you see something like this, you either become frightened or fierce. Maddie was becoming fierce. Samuel arrived within 15 minutes, and he did not come alone. 2 men followed him. Security. Quiet. Professional. The kind of people who scan corners without you asking. Samuel himself was in his late 50s, dressed like a man who has argued with judges for fun. He looked at the lock, at Evelyn's cracked lips, at the empty nightstand, and his jaw tightened. "Evelyn," he said gently, "are you stable enough to talk?" Evelyn nodded. Samuel turned to me. "Thank you for opening that door." I almost snapped something sarcastic, but the truth is, I wanted to cry. So I just said, "She was locked in there." "I know," Samuel said, "and now we document it properly." He made calls. Adult Protective Services, a private medical provider, a detective he apparently knew by first name. Life lesson: when the right lawyer makes calls, doors open. The medical provider arrived, a nurse practitioner who took one look at Evelyn and started documenting everything. Vitals, signs of dehydration, condition of the room, the lock. "Do you want transport?" she asked. Evelyn's voice turned soft, shaky, convincingly weak. "Not yet." The nurse looked at Samuel. Samuel nodded. "She's competent," he said. "Document refusal." Maddie whispered to me, "She's acting." I whispered back, "Yes, and we'll talk about that later." Because in that moment, there were bigger fires. Samuel pulled me into the hallway and spoke quietly. "Sarah, I'm going to say this plainly," he said. "Eric does not own this house." I blinked. What? "The house is owned by the Sinclair Family Trust," Samuel said. "Evelyn is the trustee. Eric has been living here and representing it as his. He has no legal claim." I felt something hot bloom in my chest. Rage, humiliation, vindication, all tangled. Samuel continued. "Eric also doesn't own the company he brags about. Evelyn does." I stared at him. "What company?" Samuel gave me a look. "The seafood distribution company your husband likes to call his business. Evelyn built it. Eric works there." My brain replayed every time Eric acted superior to me. Every time he talked down to my job, my parenting, my choices, like he was a titan and I was an accessory. Turns out he was a middle manager with attitude. Samuel handed me a folder. "Evelyn asked me to prepare emergency instructions. If she was harmed, or if someone tried, this triggers immediate legal actions." I opened it. Trust documents, revocations, password lists, instructions to freeze access, names of key executives, a line that made my throat go tight. "In the event of restraint or neglect, contact apps and police. Proceed with removal of occupants." This was not a confused old woman. This was a woman who had been planning. Back in the room, Evelyn gestured to her nightstand drawer. "Tablet," she said. I pulled it out. On it was a home security app with multiple camera angles: kitchen, hallway, living room, outside entry, video footage, not audio-heavy drama, visual proof, the kind that holds up. Evelyn's eyes were sharp as she watched my face. "I needed to see what they did when they thought I was helpless," she said. I swallowed. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wasn't sure you were safe," Evelyn replied, blunt. "And because Linda can smell sympathy like blood." Maddie leaned closer, staring at the screen. "You were watching them?" Evelyn said. "I was learning them." Evelyn tapped a folder labeled Archive. Dates going back months. "Play that," she told me, pointing to one file. The video showed Linda holding the new lock. Eric stood beside her, smirking. Linda installed it like she was upgrading the home, not imprisoning a human being. Eric laughed. He actually laughed. Maddie's face went rigid. I clicked another video. Linda removing Evelyn's water pitcher. Not spilling it, not forgetting it, removing it. like a choice. Then another. Eric in the kitchen, texting, grinning at his phone, while Brittany Collins, yes, Brittany Collins, stood too close, laughing. He kissed her, casual, comfortable, like my marriage was already a closed tab. Maddie's eyes went glossy. Dad, has someone else? I put my hand on her shoulder. She leaned into me without taking her eyes off the screen. Evelyn's voice softened. I'm sorry, Maddie. Maddie wiped her face hard, angry at the tears. He always acts like we're annoying, like we're in the way. Evelyn's gaze hardened. You are not in the way. Maddie looked at her. Then why do they treat me like I am? Evelyn's eyes flicked toward the hallway where the lock had been. Because they only care about what they can take, she said. And you, sweetheart, are not something to take. You are someone to love. That did it. My throat tightened. Because Maddie deserved to hear that from an adult who meant it. Samuel returned, calm and efficient. Here's what happens next, he said. We file for an emergency protective order for Evelyn. We notify APS. We prepare law enforcement to meet them when they return. And we cut off Eric's access to the trust and the company today. Maddie whispered, fierce. Good. Samuel looked at me. Sarah, you should file for divorce and temporary custody. First thing. I nodded. My voice barely worked. Okay, Evelyn said. I want them home. I blinked. Why? Evelyn's mouth turned flat. Because I'm finished waiting. Samuel's eyes flicked to me. We can lure them back. Evelyn looked at me. Tell Eric what he wants to hear. I understood instantly. The cruel part of them wanted a death. They wanted a clean ending. So we gave them a messy beginning. That evening, I texted Eric. It happened. Call me. I stared at the screen like I was holding a live wire. Maddie asked quietly, Are we lying? Evelyn answered, We're setting a trap. Maddie nodded like that made perfect sense. Because when you've been treated like you don't matter, you learn to appreciate strategy. Eric called within minutes. I didn't answer right away. I wanted him to sit in his panic, just for a second. Then I picked up and let my voice shake. Eric. His voice was sharp, not tender, not worried about me. What do you mean, it happened? I let silence do the work. Then I whispered, Your grandma. There was a pause. Not grief. Calculation. Eric exhaled. Okay. Don't do anything. Don't call anyone. We're getting on the next flight. Don't call anyone. The exact vibe of Linda's note. My stomach turned. I swallowed it down and said, Okay. Then I hung up and stared at my phone like it was contaminated. Maddie whispered, furious. He didn't ask if you were okay. No, I said. He didn't. Evelyn's voice was quiet. He never does. The next day moved like an organized storm. Samuel filed everything. The emergency protective order, the APS report, notices to the company, instructions to freeze Eric's access to accounts and systems, corporate cards canceled, email access revoked. Evelyn made calls to her executives and board. Yes, she had a board, like she was switching off a light. Eric's name disappeared from the company directory by lunchtime. Funny how quickly important becomes unemployed. Security remained at the house. Not dramatic, not obvious, just present. And the house changed. Not physically yet, but emotionally. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was living in Linda's shadow. I felt like I'd stepped out of it. That night, Maddie helped me put away the last of our Ocean Shores souvenirs, shells, a cheap keychain, a photo booth strip where we're both laughing. Maddie held the strip and said, "I'm glad we went." I looked at her. "Me too." She stared at it for a moment longer and added, "Even if Dad didn't want to come." I didn't correct her. Sometimes kids protect themselves with optimism. Sometimes you let them. At 10:58 p.m. the next day, the driveway camera pinged. Car lights, a door shutting, footsteps. I looked at the monitor and saw them. Eric, wheeling a suitcase, moving fast like a man who thought he was heading toward money. Linda, stiff and sharp, scanning the house like she expected to see morning. And Brittany Collins, wearing a hoodie, trying to look like she wasn't arriving at my home late at night with my husband. Maddie saw Brittany and whispered, "That's her." Her voice didn't shake this time. It hardened. Inside the living room, Evelyn sat upright in a chair. Not in bed, not frail, not confused. Hair brushed, eyes clear. Samuel stood beside her, and by the entryway stood a detective and 2 uniformed officers, calm, official, not here for family drama. I told Maddie, "Stay behind me." Maddie nodded, but she didn't retreat. She stood tall. The door opened. Eric stepped inside and stopped like he'd hit an invisible wall. Because the scene wasn't what he expected. No tears, no chaos, no corpse. Just his grandmother, alive, staring at him like he was something she'd finally identified under a microscope. Eric's mouth opened. "Grandma?" Evelyn said softly. "Hello, Eric." Linda found her voice first. Of course she did. "What is this? Why are there police here? Sarah, what did you do?" "Ah, yes. Blame the woman who broke the lock." Classic. The detective stepped forward. "Ma'am, we're here regarding a report of suspected elder abuse and unlawful imprisonment." Eric's face flashed. "That's insane!" Evelyn didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "You locked me in a room," she said, "without water." Linda scoffed. "You were fine. We were gone a few days. Sarah is exaggerating." The nurse practitioner's written report sat on the coffee table, clipped and neat. Samuel tapped it gently with one finger. "Medical documentation says otherwise," he said. Eric tried to speak. "Grandma, listen." Evelyn cut him off with one word. "No!" The air changed. Because no, from a woman who has always said yes, hits like thunder. Samuel nodded to the officer and handed over printed evidence. Photographs of the lock, the note, the empty bedside table, the dehydration signs, and selected video clips. Not spy movie clips. Real clips. Linda installing the lock. Eric standing there. Linda removing water. Eric walking past the door without stopping. Brittany in the kitchen, too close to Eric, laughing while Linda typed. Eric's breathing went shallow. Maddie whispered, just loud enough, "You did that." Eric's eyes flicked to her. For a fraction of a second, I saw him remember she existed. Then his face hardened. "Maddie, this is..." Maddie interrupted, because apparently my daughter had finally reached her limit of polite silence. "This is what?" she snapped. "A misunderstanding? You left her locked up. You left a note telling us to let her die." Linda's eyes flashed at Maddie like she wanted to slap her with a glance. "This is why children should stay out of adult business," Linda hissed. Maddie lifted her chin. "Then adults should stop doing evil stuff in front of children." The detective looked at Eric. "Sir, step over here." Eric's voice rose. "I live here." Samuel spoke calmly. "No, you don't. The house is owned by the Sinclair Family Trust. Evelyn is the trustee. You've been served with a trespass notice, and we've already petitioned the court for an emergency protection order." Eric blinked rapidly. "What? That's..." Evelyn's voice was almost gentle. "You liked calling it your house. I let you. It made you feel important. Eric's face flushed. Linda sputtered, "This is ridiculous. He's her grandson." The officer's expression didn't change. "Turn around, sir." Eric stared at the handcuffs like they were a personal betrayal. "You're arresting me? For a family issue?" The detective's tone was flat. "Elder abuse, unlawful restraint, and we're investigating financial exploitation." Linda's voice climbed into shrill territory. "Sarah did this! She's manipulating Evelyn!" I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was either laugh or scream. "Linda," I said, "I just got back from a budget resort with a broken waffle maker. I am not the criminal mastermind here." Evelyn's mouth twitched. Brittany took a step toward the door. Security quietly blocked her. No drama. Just no. Evelyn turned her gaze to Brittany. "You should have stayed away from my family," she said. Brittany tried to speak. "This is a misunderstanding." Samuel cut in smoothly. "We can do this the easy way or the expensive way. I suggest you contact counsel." Eric barked, "Brittany, go!" Brittany hesitated, eyes darting. The detective looked at her. "Ma'am, you're not under arrest right now, but you may be contacted by investigators. Do not delete any messages, photos, call logs, or financial records. And don't try to contact Evelyn." That wiped the smugness right off her face. Eric was cuffed and escorted out. Linda followed, still arguing, still furious, still shocked that consequences exist at all. At the threshold, she turned back at Maddie one last time, eyes sharp with spite. Maddie didn't flinch. The door shut. And the house, my house, Evelyn's house, finally felt like it exhaled. Maddie sank onto the stairs, shoulders shaking. I crouched in front of her. "Hey." She looked up with wet eyes. "He really wanted her to die." I swallowed hard. "Yes." Maddie's voice cracked. "Did he want us to not matter too?" I pulled her into my arms so tight I probably bruised us both. "You matter," I whispered. "You matter more than anything." Behind us, Evelyn's voice was quiet, almost regretful. "You matter," she repeated. "And I'm sorry my family made you feel otherwise." Maddie wiped her cheeks and looked at Evelyn. "Why did you pretend?" Evelyn stared toward the dark hallway. "Because sometimes," she said, "the only way to learn who people are is to let them think they've already won." Over the next few weeks, life became paperwork and healing. APS followed up. The detective took statements. Evelyn's medical documentation and the photos of the lock didn't leave room for cute excuses. Eric's attorney tried the family conflict angle. The state doesn't care about your family conflict when an elderly woman is locked in a room without water. I filed for divorce. Emergency custody. The kind of paperwork you never imagine signing until you have to. Eric called from jail. I didn't answer. Linda tried from a different number. I didn't answer. Brittany messaged me online starting with, "As a woman?" I blocked her before she finished the sentence. The company Evelyn built moved on without Eric, like he'd been a temporary intern. Evelyn moved out of the back room into a sunny front bedroom like she was reclaiming oxygen. Maddie helped pick curtains. Evelyn let her, which was its own quiet revolution. Some nights I found Maddie sitting with Evelyn, listening to her talk about the ocean, about business, about how people will try to take what they didn't build. Evelyn would say, "Never sign anything you didn't read." Maddie would nod like she was storing it for her future. One morning, Evelyn handed me a folder. Inside were trust amendments and a college fund plan for Maddie. I stared at it. "Evelyn, you don't have to." "I do," Evelyn said. I watched them treat her like she was disposable. I watched her show compassion anyway. That deserves protection. Maddie, standing in the doorway, whispered, Is that for me? Evelyn's gaze softened. Yes, for you. Maddie stepped forward slowly, like she wasn't used to adults choosing her. I didn't do anything special, she said. Evelyn replied, You tried to save someone. In this family, that's apparently rare. Maddie made a small sound that was half laugh, half sob. Okay. And then she hugged Evelyn. It wasn't a Hallmark hug. It was awkward and real, and exactly what it should have been years earlier. Months later, the house felt different. Not perfect, but safe. We repainted the kitchen. Maddie insisted on herbs in the backyard because plants are calming. Evelyn deadpanned, Basil won't fix betrayal. And Maddie said, It might fix pasta. And Evelyn actually laughed. That sound, Evelyn laughing, made me realize how long that house had been holding its breath. People ask me sometimes, Do you regret marrying him? I think about the note. I think about Maddie's shaking thumb over the 911 button. I think about Evelyn's hand grabbing my daughter's wrist, strong, deliberate, like she was anchoring her to the truth. And I think about Eric walking into the living room expecting a funeral and finding police, a lawyer, and a grandmother who refused to die on schedule. Regret is complicated. But here's what I know. Family isn't who shares your last name. It's who shows up when a door is locked and someone inside is waiting to be saved. Eric and Linda thought kindness was weakness. They thought silence meant surrender. They thought let her die was a plan. Instead, it became evidence. Evidence has a funny habit of turning into handcuffs. So yes, my in-laws lost everything. But what mattered most? My daughter learned she's not invisible, and I learned that sometimes the quietest person in the house isn't powerless. Sometimes she's just collecting proof. Thanks for watching till the end. If this story hit close to home, give it a like and subscribe for more. And I'm curious, who do you think was really wrong here? Tell me in the comments. See you next time. I paid for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary at a luxury hotel in Manhattan. I wired the deposit, paid for the band, the flowers, the open bar, even a custom cake. I bought them a Swiss watch set that cost more than some people's cars. In return, my mother pointed at me and told security, "Get this beggar out of here!" So I showed them what their beggar was really worth. I walked into the lobby of the plaza in a $4,000 dress and felt like I'd accidentally stolen someone else's life. The dress? A pale, sleek thing from a designer who usually dresses women who brunch on the Upper East Side, fit perfectly. My hair, fresh from a salon in Soho, still held that expensive wave. Only the mascara betrayed me, carving black rivers down cheeks I'd tried to contour into effortlessly happy. In my hands, I was still clutching a velvet box, a pair of Swiss watches worth about $6,000, a small gift for 50 years of marriage. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry." The security guy took me lightly by the elbow. That polished, trained gentleness expensive places require. "Your name was removed from the guest list last night. I'm afraid I can't let you in." Removed. He said it like we were talking about a typo, not a daughter. Removed by whom? "Your parents asked us to update the list," the manager added, eyes soft with professional pity. "Again, we're very sorry. Please." Behind the glass doors, I could see everything. My mom, in a gold dress, hugging my younger brother Mike. My dad, lifting a champagne flute. My younger sister Erica, laughing loudly, holding court with her friends. A family celebration. My family. Just without me. I took a breath that felt like it hit concrete halfway down. "Let me talk to my mother," I said. They hesitated, but someone opened the door to the ballroom a crack. My mom didn't even step into the hall. She spoke from inside, like I was a delivery she hadn't ordered. "We thought you wouldn't come, Megan," she said, sounding inconvenienced. This is a family event. It's really just for close family. Family. Without me. I held out the velvet box. For you and Dad, I managed. She didn't take it. Instead, she turned to the nearest waiter. Please take this away. Get it out of here. Then she waved toward me with that same dismissive flick she used on telemarketers. Actually, get her out. Get this beggar out of here. The word hit harder than the cold wind waiting outside. Beggar. After I had wired over $7,000 for the banquet deposit. After 10 years of paying their bills, covering Mike's business ideas, funding Erica's girls' trips and emergency credit cards. I was the beggar. The doors closed. The elevator down to the lobby crawled, giving me way too much time to stare at myself in mirrored walls. Woman in a designer dress, mascara smeared, fingers shaking around a box no one wanted. On a monitor in the corner, they were streaming the live feed from the ballroom for the staff. I watched my mother hugging Mike, Dad giving some heartfelt toast, Erica laughing with a glass in her hand. Family celebration. Without me. Couples glided past me in the lobby, giving me those quick, curious looks people give car accidents they're not sure they're allowed to stare at. The doorman held the door open. February wind off the Hudson slapped me in the face, sharp and wet. To downtown, I croaked to the cab driver as I slid into the back seat. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, at the ruined makeup, the expensive dress, and didn't ask a single question. He'd seen this before. Women in good shoes leaving someone else's happiness. New York blurred past in streaks of light. I hugged the watch box like it was the last thing anchoring me to reality. I was 34, a successful investment analyst, owner of my own consulting agency. Clients from the Upper East Side and the Hamptons trusted me with millions, and to my own parents, I was a beggar. In my head, their words looped like a scratched record. I'm not your daughter. You're always on your own, Megan. We have our own. Our own, in their dictionary, never included me. By the time the cab pulled into the underground garage of my building, a glass and steel tower in downtown Manhattan, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely swipe my card to pay the driver. No one from my family had ever been here. Why would we go into those anthills? My mother always scoffed whenever I invited them. We like real homes, not boxes in the sky. My box in the sky was a 2-bedroom condo on the 32nd floor with floor-to-ceiling windows and a designer kitchen. I'd paid for all of it myself. In the dark, empty garage, everything I'd swallowed for 34 years ripped its way out. The scream came from somewhere low and animal and ugly. It tore my throat raw and bounced off concrete. Years of swallowed comments and, we didn't mean it like that, and, you know your brother needs more help than you do. My phone vibrated. Hey! Stacy's voice beamed from the speaker. How's the golden couple? Are you dancing already? Send me a pic of that dress. I want to hate you properly. I swallowed metal. They threw me out, I said. The words scraped. I'm not their daughter. Silence. No crackle. No joke. Where are you? Garage. In my car. Stay there. Don't drive. I'm coming. 20 minutes later, she was banging on the window of my car. She didn't say anything, just opened the door and wrapped her arms around me like she was physically holding me together. Upstairs, in my overly tidy living room, I collapsed on the couch and poured it all out. The ballroom, the guest list, the manager, the word beggar, my mom talking to me through a crack in the door like I was the wrong delivery. Stacy reheated takeout pilaf, poured red wine, unzipped the back of my dress. $4,000 sliding to the floor in a puddle of fabric. This isn't just toxic, she said finally. This is psychological abuse. You know that, right? You're not being dramatic. You're a victim. Victim. I'd never used that word about myself. I was the strong one, the responsible one. the one who could handle it. I'm not a victim, I muttered. I run portfolios. I fix things. Yeah, she nodded. You fix everyone's mess but your own. Something clicked in my brain. I have a spreadsheet, I blurted. An actual one. I've always tracked the money, just in case. I dragged my laptop across the coffee table, still in my slip, and opened a file named, very creatively, family_expenses.xlsx. It opened instantly. Rows and rows and rows. Dates, transfers, purchases, payments. 10 years of just this once, and we'll pay you back. And you understand, you're good with money. At the bottom, in the total cell, a number glowed. 15,347,000. As a raw number, it had always felt abstract. When I translated it into real money in my head, it landed around $200,000. $200,000. My chest tightened. That was a decent condo in New York. That was a comfortable retirement. That was a business from scratch. A boat. A year of travel around the world. That was an entire life I had handed to people who had just called me a beggar. I scrolled through the rows. Erica's tutors for her kids, month after month, about $1,600 each time. New bedroom furniture for my parents, $5,000. Mike's barber shop, roughly $36,000. My parents' spa retreat in Palm Springs, about $11,000. Full renovation of my parents' apartment, over $40,000. Every line was a slice of my time. Every figure was a trip I didn't take, a dream I postponed for later. I fed them, dressed them, entertained them, patched their holes, rescued their bad decisions. In return, I got, "Get this beggar out of here!" My family had been slowly eating my life through endless small requests, and I'd let them because I thought that was what love looked like. Spoiler, it's not. Love, I realized, was Erica's crooked kindergarten drawing of a house with a sun that hung over my parents' couch for 30 years. Love was Mike setting the garage on fire at 14, and everyone laughing, "Boys will be boys." Love was having a permanent seat at the table, no questions asked. For me, love was, "You're strong. You'll manage." I was the ATM, always stocked, always available. About $200,000 over 10 years. Not a cent of actual affection. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember Stacy's voice, the glow of the laptop, and that number at the bottom of the spreadsheet, burning holes in my retinas. 15,347,000. 200,000. Price of admission to a family that still saw me as an outsider. To understand how I got there. $200,000 deep into funding people who could throw me out of a party I paid for. You have to back up. Way back. I don't remember the first time I realized I was the extra child. Probably around the time I started bringing home certificates. At 9, I won first place in a district math competition. I came home with a printed certificate and the kind of grin you only get when numbers finally obey you. My dad glanced up from the TV just long enough to say, "Sit with Mike. He needs to memorize his multiplication table." He didn't even read what the award was for. Mike's crooked crayon house with a sun, though? That drawing hung above the couch for years. When I graduated from NYU's business school with honors, in the cap and gown and all that, there's a photo of me on the stage, smiling into a crowd that isn't mine. My parents didn't come. "Mike has finals," Mom said. "He's stressed." Translation: his exam anxiety outranked my entire degree. At 14, Mike burned down half the garage trying to fix something with gasoline and a lighter. Mom giggled. "Well, boys are like that, full of ideas." At 15, I was tutoring other kids in algebra so I could buy myself winter boots that didn't leak. Middle child. Invisible child. the one who would figure it out. And I did. I worked 14-hour days in a venture fund. Startups, pitch decks, endless meetings. At 30, I launched my own consulting agency. Clients trusted me with their portfolios, their retirement, their kids' college funds. By 32, I had the downtown condo, the savings, the successful woman LinkedIn profile. That's when the calls started. Can you help with the utilities? They messed up Dad's pension again. We're short this month, Megan, just until the check comes. You know how Social Security is. Megan, I've got this idea. Self-service car wash. You understand business. You get it. Mike's car wash lasted exactly 3 months. Then came the barber shop. Then an online marketplace importing cheap junk from China. You're doing great, Meg. Mom would sigh into the phone. You've got that fancy job and your nice apartment. Your brother is trying. Send something. You know how it is. Erica's style was different. Hey, sis. The girls and I are flying to Mexico. It's this amazing all-inclusive. We're just short a little. You're good with money. Can you help? She didn't even bother with please. I helped. Always. Because family. Because they have no one but you. Because you'll understand when you're older. Then there were the vacations I wasn't invited to. On Memorial Day, the whole extended family went to a beach house in Florida. I found out from Erica's Instagram story, sunburned noses, cheap wine, everyone laughing on a deck. Oh, Megan, she said when I called once. You're always working. We didn't want to bother you. Right. The first time my mom's voice softened toward me in years was about 6 months before the golden anniversary. Sweetheart, she cooed on the phone. Your dad and I have our 50th coming up. We've always dreamed of celebrating in a beautiful hotel in Manhattan, somewhere like the Plaza. You know we could never afford that. She let the sentence hang. You're the only one who could make this happen for us. I took the bait. Of course I did. I transferred a deposit of about $7,000. The planner emailed me, all flowers and menus and special anniversary packages. I should have been suspicious when they started ghosting me in the group chat, though. At first, they answered my questions. Then, emojis, thumbs up, hearts. No real answers. When I asked about seating, there was a long pause. Then Erica finally texted, Wait, you're coming too? I laughed it off. Of course, I typed. I am your daughter. The day of the party, I booked the stylist, the makeup artist, picked up the watch set. I walked into that lobby believing, stupidly, that money could buy me at least a chair at the table. We both know how that turned out. Back in my condo, sometime between sobbing into Stacy's sweater and staring at the spreadsheet, another thought threaded through the wreckage. They didn't just throw me out of a party. They threw me out of a life I'd been paying for on autopilot. The next morning, my phone woke me up before the sun did, buzzing itself half to death on the nightstand. Stacy was snoring on the couch under a blanket. I slipped out of bed like I was sneaking past a sleeping dragon and padded into the kitchen. I made coffee and finally looked at my screen. The Chase app helpfully displayed my recent transactions from the card my whole family had access to. I'd opened that shared account years ago, just in case of emergencies. I'd forgotten it even existed. The card lived in my wallet, but everyone else had the number saved. Overnight charges glowed on the screen. Extra charges for the banquet, about $4,000. Skyline Lounge, a trendy rooftop bar where the after party had clearly migrated, roughly $2,000. A custom cake from a famous New York bakery, around $700. They were still celebrating on my dime after they'd had me escorted out. The app didn't show a charge for humiliation, but I mentally added that to the total. In my head, my mom's voice replayed crisp and cold. Get this beggar out of here. The coffee machine finished hissing. I poured a mug, sat down at the table, and opened Instagram. The first post in my feed stopped me cold. There it was, the cake. 3 tiers, gold accents, fondant roses. My mother, smiling beside my dad, his arm around her shoulders. Caption: 50 years of love. So grateful for my beautiful family. Not one word about who paid for that grateful family tableau. I scrolled. Photos from the Mediterranean cruise I'd gifted them the previous new. Stacy poured herself coffee, sat across from me, and met my eyes. So what now, sponsor? Now. That word felt different. I closed Instagram. Now, I said. I stopped being their ATM. For the first time in years, my chest felt light. Not good exactly. It still hurt. But the perpetual weight, the sense that I always owed someone something, was gone. I opened my email and typed, Ella, good morning. I need a full breakdown of all family-related expenses from the last year and the contact info for our attorney. Ella, my assistant, replied in 10 minutes. She always does. On it. Are you okay? Better than I've been in a long time, I wrote back. By lunchtime, she'd sent a fresh spreadsheet. I looked at the numbers like they were X-rays. Half of the banquet was already paid. About $7,000. The cruise for my parents. Roughly $3,000 with departure in a month. A family vacation package for Erica, her husband, and their kids. About $4,000 flying out in 2 weeks. Another $2,000 wired to a landlord as a temporary loan for Mike's new barbershop location. A $7,000 renewal for my parents' country club membership in New Jersey. In total, roughly $36,000 already committed to their future fun, all from my money. By the afternoon, I was on the phone with our attorney. He listened, professional and unflappable, as I laid everything out. 10 years of transfers, no written agreements. We'll pay you back, you know us. All the usual lines. So, legally, he said, anything without a written loan agreement, promissory note, or at least some message specifying repayment will be considered a gift. You can't reclaim what's already spent. I figured, I said. What about the stuff that isn't fully paid for yet? That you can cancel, he replied. Future charges, bookings made in your name. Those you're absolutely allowed to stop. As for the so-called loans to your brother without any paperwork, in the eyes of the law, those are gifts. 10 years of gifts to people who just called me a beggar. Cute. Thank you, I said. I'll take it from here. Ella called as soon as I hung up. They're going to lose it, Megan, she warned, nerves in her voice. It's going to be a storm. Let them, I said. I'm done living in this insanity. The next 2 hours, I treated my family like a failing portfolio. I built a detailed register by person, year, and type of expense, like internal bank loans. I even calculated opportunity cost, what those amounts would be worth now if I'd invested them instead. By the end, the totals looked like this. Around $200,000 directly spent. Roughly $45,000 in lost investment gains. $250,000. Price of my family. You could have bought a beach house in Florida, Ella murmured when she saw the numbers. Or started a charity. I still can, I said. But first, I have to stop bleeding. I drafted the cancellation emails the same day. The cruise agency. Hi, this is Megan Campbell. I'm canceling the booking under my parents' names. I understand there's a cancellation fee. Please process the refund to my account. Yes, there was a penalty, a few $100s gone. Fine. 95% came back to me. The resort company for Erica's family trip. Cancel the package completely. Actually, keep the penalty out of the total. I'll send my nephews some pocket money directly. They're not to blame. Mike's business loan. Hello, I'm blocking the scheduled transfer to this commercial landlord. This is my final decision. The country club. Please do not renew my parents' membership. Any future billing must go directly to them, not to my card. Then the plaza. Good afternoon. This is Megan Campbell. I paid the deposit for Saturday's event. Of course, Ms. Campbell. We remember you. How can we assist? I'm not asking for the deposit back, I said, but I want to cancel all the additional orders, roughly $4,000 worth. Bill my parents for anything extra, and please transfer my deposit to Harbor Light Children's Hospice, anonymously. A pause. Then, we'll handle it exactly as you requested. By evening, everything was done. Cruise, canceled. Family resort trip, canceled. Country club membership, gone. Mike's transfer, blocked. Banquet extras, removed. Money redirected to sick kids instead of people who called me a beggar. My phone had 34 missed calls. I turned on an autoresponder. As of today, I am no longer financing family members. All financial obligations are terminated. The shared account has been closed. Then I blocked their numbers. For a week, the silence was oxygen. One night, Stacy came over with a bottle of wine. We sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over Manhattan's skyline. How are you? She asked. Free, I said. And yeah, it hurts, but I was never their daughter. I was their bank. She raised her glass. Then here's to your Independence Day. The phone started screaming again that night. I muted everything, but the screen kept lighting up, buzzing its outrage onto the nightstand. In the morning, I scrolled through the messages. Mike. You killed my business, you bee! Erica. The kids are crying. They were dreaming about the ocean. How could you do this to them? My father. You're a traitor. After everything we've done for you. I had to laugh at that one. After everything they had done for me? At 7 a.m., someone leaned on the buzzer like the building was on fire. On the video screen by my door, my whole family stood huddled together. My mother, father, Erica with her kids, and Mike. In a building with 24/7 security, this kind of crowd was unusual. The concierge had already called up, confused. I told him to let them come up. They didn't wait for an invitation when I opened the door. They barreled in and arranged themselves in the hallway like an angry semicircle. A furious little committee. You've lost your mind, Erica started. You've ruined my kids' vacation. We're a laughingstock now. Mom flung her hands in the air. I had to call everyone and explain that my daughter had some breakdown. I invested in that space. Mike jabbed a finger at me. Signed contracts. You're destroying my business. My dad just stared for a long moment, then barked, You will fix this. Right now. We raised you, remember? I looked at them. At my mother in the mink coat I'd bought her. My father in the expensive glasses I'd given him for his last birthday. Erica's children in the high-end clothes I'd paid for as little surprises. No, I said. One word. The hallway went still. Then they exploded. Hysterical! We'll take you to court. We fed you, clothed you, gave you everything. You owe us for life, Dad shouted over all of them. If you don't change your mind right now, you are no longer our daughter. I almost laughed. And exactly when was I ever your daughter? I asked quietly. I turned, walked into the living room, and opened my laptop. They followed, still shouting. I spun the screen around. This, I said, tapping the spreadsheet, is 10 years of my life. Totals, broken down by year and name. Here, about $200,000 spent on you in the last decade. And here, roughly $36,000 I canceled yesterday. Dates, amounts, recipients, purposes. These aren't emotions. These are facts. You're ripping everything out of context, my mother squealed. We never meant to hurt you. It was stress, Dad added. Every family goes through tough times. Mom, I interrupted. Did you forget what you said when I came to your anniversary? She fell silent. I didn't. You looked at me, I said, and you told them, "Get this beggar out of here." The room froze. Erica and Mike stared at the floor. My mom's hands were trembling. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. Once upon a time, those tears would have sent me running to the bank to transfer money, fix something, carry something, bail someone out. Now I just felt tired. From this day, I said, my voice flat, there will be no more transfers, no more loans, no more surprise gifts. Erica, Mike, you're both capable adults. You can work and support your own families. My father hissed like a cornered cat. You'll regret this. No, I replied. For the first time in my life, I have self-respect. That's worth more than your "you'll regret it." My mother clutched her chest, going for drama. You're abandoning your family, acting like you're better than us. I tilted my head. When you had security escort me out of your party, what did people think I was? A server who walked into the wrong ballroom? Because you sure didn't introduce me as your daughter. They shuffled out eventually, single file, not looking at me. The door slammed. I stayed by the window, staring at the gray little courtyard between the neighboring buildings. Inside, there was no familiar crack where my energy constantly leaked out. For the first time in years, I felt intact. I waited for the tidal wave, the sobbing, the panic, the guilt. Instead, a different feeling rolled in, like someone had finally taken off a heavy, wet coat I'd been wearing since childhood. Space, air, the ability to breathe. My phone pinged. A text from Liz, my cousin, someone I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. I know everything. I'm sorry I stayed quiet so long. I'm proud of you. You're strong. It was the first message in years that didn't smell like a demand or a guilt trip. The backlash took about 8 months to fully hit. First wave, flying monkeys. That's what my therapist, Dr. Karen Lewis, a soft-spoken woman in her 60s with steel-strong boundaries, called relatives who suddenly remember you exist when you stop paying. Every Wednesday, I sat in her office and untangled the same themes. You're not an ATM, Megan, she would remind me. You're a person. You're allowed to exist without constantly over-serving others. We practiced not answering manipulation immediately. Before you respond to anyone, she said, ask yourself, what am I feeling? What do I want? Then decide if you respond at all. The calls and messages kept coming. Aunt Valerie, your mom's worried sick. Her blood pressure is through the roof. Do you really want to do this to her? A family friend. Maybe you overreacted a little? You know your parents love you. Even an old professor from NYU somehow dragged into the drama. You can't treat your parents this way, Megan. Family is sacred. My answer was always the same. Polite, clear. If you were silent when they humiliated me, please don't expect explanations from me now. I'm not available to help. I wish you well. No justifications, no essays, no back and forth. Second wave, reality. Without my money, things in my parents' world started to crack. They sold their house upstate. There was no one to pay for maintenance anymore, my cousin Liz later told me. They moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in Queens. Mike shut down his latest LLC. Debt collectors started calling. For the first time in her life, Erica took out a loan in her name for a new kitchen. My photos quietly disappeared from family albums. In the big family group chat, it was as if I'd never existed. To neighbors on the landing, my mom reportedly said, "We have 2 children now," meaning Mike and Erica. The family I'd been chasing my whole life had always been made up. I realize now their love was a contract. I told Dr. Karen once. As long as I paid, I belonged. And what do you feel now? She asked. I thought about it. Relief, I said finally, and grief for a family that never actually existed. 6 months after the showdown in my living room, my phone buzzed with a very neutral message from Dad. Maybe we could meet for coffee? I brought it to therapy like a school kid handing over a permission slip. What do I do? I asked. What do you want? Dr. Karen countered. Honestly, I want to see if anything has changed, I admitted. Without lying to myself. Then meet, she said. But on your terms, public place, 30 minutes, no money talk, and you leave if they cross those lines. We met at a small cafe in Greenwich Village. They looked older, smaller, like someone had turned down the saturation on them. We talked about the weather, their health, my work. Surface, surface, surface. We miss you, Mom said at last, voice trembling. Do you miss me? I asked. Or do you miss my money? She looked down and picked at the edge of her napkin. Dad cleared his throat. Just think about what it means to be a family, he said. I do, I replied. Every day. We finished our coffee. No one brought up bills, loans, or just this one thing. We said goodbye on the sidewalk like colleagues parting after a meeting. The power they'd had over me dissolved like morning fog. What was left was just me, whole, real, and a New Year's Eve party that felt like mine. Not $1 million ballroom, a simple walk-up apartment in Brooklyn at my friend Gina's place. IKEA string lights taped along the walls, the smell of clementines and cheap sparkling wine, laughter that didn't have an agenda. I'd also stopped being bled dry. Turns out, when you're not bankrolling multiple households, your business has room to grow. Without the constant financial hemorrhage, I opened a second office in Chicago, hired 2 brilliant young analysts, Katie and Tony, gave an interview to Bloomberg about how to stop losing money on toxic family ties. The article blew up. My bank account stopped looking like a public utility. My energy did too. Online, I found a private Facebook group for people who'd cut financial cords with abusive families. There was Gina, who'd been paying her parents' mortgage while renting a room for herself. Sam, whose older brother kept investing his money into the latest get-rich-quick scheme. Cassie, supporting a mother who spent everything on psychics. We met for dinner once a month. No judgment. No advice unless asked. Just people sharing stories over pasta. For my 35th birthday, I did something radical. I celebrated on my terms. No politely forced relatives. No, you pay, we show up. Just my people. Stacy was there, of course. Gina brought cookies. Sam showed up with the first printed copy of his short story collection. Self-published, but he already had interest from a small press. Cassie came with her 3-month-old son Tim, named after her grandfather. They loved me for exactly nothing I could buy them. Later that evening, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was Liz and my Aunt Margaret, my dad's younger sister. The one who had walked out of the golden anniversary right after I'd been kicked out. No scene, no words, just grabbed her coat and left. Aunt Margaret handed me an old envelope. This is from Grandma Eleanor, she said. I wanted to give it to you earlier, but your mother always said, she's not ready yet. I think you are now. Inside was a letter on yellowed paper and a statement from an investment account. Megan, my dear granddaughter, it read. You were always my favorite, though I never said it out loud. I knew you wouldn't break. The others needed my daily support. You only needed to know that I believed in you. This money is yours and only yours. Use it when you finally stand up for yourself. Grandma had been gone 7 years. In that time, about $200,000 had quietly grown in that account. While I was learning to choose myself, that money had been waiting for me. By then, the place upstate was already gone. They'd sold it when there was no one left to pay for the upkeep. They squeezed deeper into that one bedroom in Queens. Mike shut down yet another business, blaming everyone but himself. Erica's perfect kitchen came with payments and interest. Her first taste of a reality I'd been shielding her from for years. My mother started telling neighbors on the stairwell, "We have 2 children," meaning the ones who still played by her script. I started something else. Part of Grandma's money went into establishing the Eleanor Campbell Foundation. Small scholarships and emergency grants for young women who'd been financially and emotionally abused by their own families. The rest stayed put, quietly earning. I knew someday I'd know exactly what to do with it. One winter evening, I stood by my own window, watching snow swirl in the streetlights. The city glowed with holiday lights. Behind me, my apartment was loud. People were arguing about movies. Someone was trying to teach baby Tim how to clap. It smelled like potato salad and cheap champagne. An ordinary New Year's Eve, in an ordinary apartment with very ordinary people. I looked at the chaos and felt my face relax into a smile. So this is what family looks like, I thought. Not the one you're shoved into by blood and obligation, the one you choose yourself, the one that doesn't charge admission or send you an invoice for existing. And this time, I wasn't the beggar. I was the one who finally shut the ATM down and walked away with my life. So tell me, did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.